there's been a lot going around multi-dimensions and many dimensions, many different realities and perceptions, and I was thinking about that. I was like, maybe there's a reason for this. Maybe there is some truth to this, because why else would I be seeing this? Why else would any of us be seeing this? And most people, I have a feeling like you might not be thinking about it in the same ways that I do, and that's perfectly okay. When I see all these multi-dimensional movies, shows such as Invincible, or we can look at like the whole MS Marvel Cinematic Universe as well right now, and I think DC might be doing it as well. There's all these different worlds, these different planets, these different places that we ourselves can visit, and that's something that kind of got me thinking. It's like, what if we have that same ability? And it begins within our mind. Instead of it beginning outside and like we can physically go to this place, to that place, what if it's more of a mental regard where it's like, okay, this is the type of life that I want to live. I want to be in this dimension, in this reality, in this world, and I start living that way inside my own head, and I start thinking that way, and I start believing those things, and I start acting that outside of me. Because I was talking with this girl the other night we were in the hot tub, and we were talking and chatting and having a good time, and her and I got on the topic of how she would always replay her like certain memories or experiences within her head. I did the exact same thing, and I would start to replay this idea or that idea in my head, and I would always change it when I was younger. And it's a theory called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, where what you do is you take, say, the event from the day, and it could be maybe a conversation they had with a friend, maybe you wanted to approach this girl and you're afraid to, and you wanted to, or maybe you also wanted to close some deals, and they didn't go the way that you wanted them to. So what I would do back in the day, and I still do this to this day as well too, is after that event happened, I'd be laying in bed, I'd be going to bed at night, and I'd visualize myself interacting and having that same conversation, that same event play out in the way that I wanted it to. And I made it so that this is how I wanted this interaction to go the next time I came into a similar situation. And I would do that every single night. I'd visualize it before I'd fall asleep. I'd see it. And in a sense, I was going from different dimension to different dimension. Because in one reality, in one dimension, this said event happened. And then later at night, I jumped into a different dimension and I started looking at it from this type of angle, this different perspective, from the way that I wanted it to happen. Because too often, from the conversations that I've had with other people, with myself, with just friends of mine, we are all living within our own head, and perception is reality. So we do have the ability to jump from dimension to dimension within our own head by doing some neuro-linguistic programming. So I'll give you an example again. When I was in my early 20s, what I ended up doing was I would step out into the world, and I'd go out and I'd experience it, and I'd have conversations with people. And maybe I'd mess up. Maybe I'd have a conversation where I was like, okay, I shouldn't have said this, or maybe I shouldn't have asked this question, or like I'd replay the environment in my head, because I was big into the red pill game, which if you guys aren't familiar with the red pill or game, I have a feeling you are. But if not, I'll just give a little brief synopsis of it, little brief summary of it. What the red pill community is it is a community of men that are taught how to manipulate women so that they can sleep with them. I was in that world for a long time. I didn't sleep with as many women as I could have because it just felt wrong to me, and I was always the type of person, as you guys have seen on, I think, day 4 or something like that, if I'm remembering correctly, how like I'd rather just love and have that one person compared to having like all these different people that are around me all the time. And from that experience, I didn't want to go super deep into the red pill community, but it did help me build confidence and conviction within myself, which was incredibly valuable. And when I would have these conversations with these women, I would maybe mess up. I wouldn't ask for the number. I'd do some weird line that like the people were telling me to do. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's perfect. That's okay. That is just how it goes. And it was day 3, my bad if I said day 4. Day 3 was when I did that video on like love, and that's why I went that route. So what I would end up doing was late at night, right before I would go to bed, is I would replay that scenario in my head, but I'd play it out in the ways that I wanted it to happen. And then as I started to do that, at the time I didn't recognize or realize what was happening. I was making small little subtle shifts within my own mind, so that then when I was out in the real world, once I was out interacting with people, with women, with friends, whatever it may be, I was already prepared because I already had played that scenario back in my head. And it was a very different way of looking at the world and viewing things. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, yeah, I'm just replaying the scenario in my head in the way that I want it to be. And then as I started to do that more and more, recently it's been happening a lot quicker. Like when I replay the scenario or that scenario or whatever it may be within my head, all of a sudden I start to see it outside of my head. And I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. So in a sense, I'm jumping from dimension to dimension. At one point in time, I'm here in maybe a world where I mess up and I screw up, and I'm just like, okay, I didn't ask the right question. I didn't have the right response. I didn't replay the scenario in the right way. So I remove myself from that scenario when I go into bed, and I replay it in the ways that I wanted it to be replayed. And it has transformed my life in more ways than I can explain right now, because it's something that it can't really be explained. It's something that has to be experienced and felt firsthand compared to me telling you how to do it. And by me telling you how to do it, like at least you sitting there and laying in bed at night. And if you're more of a visual or a word person, depending on how your mind works, because it's a question that I always ask people, and you can leave your response down in the comments down below, of do you think in words or images, both or neither? It's a question that I love asking people because it helps me understand. It just gives me a glimpse into how somebody else is thinking, which I think is a really cool, insightful thing to do. And like I say in other videos of mine too as well, you guys, if you find this valuable, if you like it, if you don't like it, just share it with a friend, family member, your grandma, your grandma, your grandpa, your cousin, your niece, your nephew, anybody who you think might find some use out of this type of content, because I'm wanting to change how we perceive ourselves. And once we change how we perceive ourselves, that's when everything else around us changes, because that's all I've done over the past couple of years. It's been about 6 or 7 years at this point in time. I would always work on changing other people. I'd always work on change. Like I try to change other people. When I had this subtle shift recently, where instead of me trying to change other people by having other people push into that dimension, the other dimension, what I do now is I'm just like, okay, I want to go into a different dimension. So I do that by going into my mind, looking at the place that I want to be, moving myself into that new dimension. And now all of a sudden, I'm in that new place. We aren't in the same place that I once was. I'm able to experience new things that I never experienced because I went there within my own mind first, and then it just kind of started to reflect in the external world. And anybody can do this power. It does take some time. It does take some practice. It will require you to sit alone in silence and solitude, not be lonely. Just sit alone for, I'd say start out with 5, maybe 10 minutes a day. I started out with 20. Like I use this app called Waking Up by Sam Harris, the meditation app. It helped me get to that point so that I could focus on like one thing and one breath and one specific task, compared to me having to go from this idea to that idea and bouncing back and forth, because our minds are bombarded with so much information nowadays where it does become difficult to jump from dimension to dimension when you do said thing. Like when your mind's all over the place, when it's like, say, looking at TikTok or Instagram or pornography or all these other like negative things that aren't helping you move forward. Once you remove and alleviate all of those vices, substances that you have, those addictions, that is when I can say that a sense of clarity, a sense of purpose, a sense of drive, an easier way of moving from dimension to dimension will begin to happen for you. I suggest trying it, giving it a try, letting me know if it works for you. It may take some time. It may take a week. It may take a month. It may take a day, depending on where you are at on like your spiritual, your mental, your journey to begin with. And the more you do it, the more it will start to make sense with what I'm talking about right now. I am only here to provide some additional information and insight that you might not have gotten by being in this community. And that's kind of why I'm taking a much different approach than I have in the past 2-3 years, because clearly it wasn't working in the ways that I wanted it to. So I'm doing these videos for me now. I'm more or less just talking to my past self and my future self, so that then I can come back and review these types of videos a little bit later. Be like, okay, yeah, that's true. I do like that idea. And I have been experimenting with it more, and it is valid. Like we do have different dimensions that we can jump through, different portals, different places that we can go, all within our own mind.